There has been a very notable rise in the reports of trans people being denied access to hormone replacement therapy, or HRT for short. So, Transactual has heard from 215 trans adults across the UK who have had their HRT prescriptions rejected by their GPs, an action that essentially forces medical detransition. So this issue is not new, and it continues a troubling trend where some GPs refuse to support trans people and patients despite the NHS's obligation to provide transgender healthcare. The spike appears to be linked to updated guidance released in April 2024, and Transactual demand that further action must be taken to ensure that rogue GPs stop interfering with essential medications by enforcing the requirement to follow up prescriptions to have to come from gender clinics. None of these refusals were due to medical safety or concerns from the GPs. They openly admitted their actions stemmed from personal beliefs. So, this indicates that transphobic GPs, particularly in England, feel empowered to deny patients critical medication due to their own prejudice. What world are we living in? I don't know. Among these people denied HRT by their GPs in the last year, more than a quarter of them have been prescribed medication by an NHS gender clinic. Half of these individuals had been on HRT for over 5 years. These are not new patients who are trying to get medication. I saw even a post on Reddit from a person who has been on HRT for 17 years and they got denied by their GP. Alarmingly, though, 8 respondents were denied HRT even though they had undergone surgeries that made them reliant on it for hormonal balances. This denial puts them at severe risk. So, once again, this amounts to GPs independently attempting to force medical detransition without any oversight or justification, and these GPs must be held accountable for the harm and discrimination they are inflicting. The most common excuse GPs gave for this dangerous behavior was a lack of training or competence in prescribing HRT. This highlights the impact of the updated guidance. It is unacceptable to harm patients for this reason, especially given the relative simplicity of the GP's role in monitoring the blood work of trans people on HRT. It's very simple, it's very easy. You don't need to be an expert for this. GPs must receive training to provide this essential service as a priority because there should be. Oops, sorry, my notes have crashed in front of me. Oops, sorry. They should be clearly responsible for ensuring continuity. Guys, we're not having a good day with the words. They're not making sense. Currently, no one in the NHS is taking responsibility for preventing the forced medical detransition of trans individuals. The impact of these refusals and the conversations that follow sends literal shockwaves through the UK trans community. Many now fearing that talking to their doctors, sharing information, or attending checkups, they don't want to go. They don't want to see their doctors. The mental health toll on a community that already faces high levels of discrimination and distrust in the medical system, as shown in the Trans Lives Matter survey, it can't be overstated how serious this is. Josh, I can't believe this is where we're at in 2024. Even in some conservative states in America, they haven't gone this far. So where are we now? What are your thoughts on this? Because I'm pretty pissed off about this, to be honest.
It's very disturbing. Yeah, it is very disturbing, and it is a part of a systemic kind of shift that we've had over the last couple of years. As part of a few years really, part of a generalised backlash against trans rights in the UK, and also in a broader sense around LGBT rights and issues, actually, in terms of narratives, in terms of political discussion. But I think this is probably more directly connected to the CAS review and its kind of impact. Not least in terms of the kind of restrictions that have been introduced by the previous Conservative government and intensified by the Labour government, but also like the kind of cultural shift that it represents. Although if you actually read the CAS review, it's a lot more kind of ambiguous about certain things than the actual politicians who take it and use it as a weapon. I recommend everyone reading it with a critical eye, actually. But looking at this is why so many trans people turn to private providers, which is not ideal. It really isn't ideal, especially in terms of cost. Um, but hopefully there could be some sort of pushback against GPs doing this. It's a
Yeah.
difficult situation though, because if you're dealing with a case of like several professionals at a clinic either refusing to do so for political reasons or claiming they don't have the training or feigning that they don't have the training or whatever, it's a difficult thing to deal with. I can imagine situations of people just changing GP regularly, which isn't ideal if you're trying to maintain continuity of care and treatment, right?
When it comes to like the abortion debate or the assisted dying
Mm,
debate, I understand why a doctor might not want to opt in for being a part of that as a treatment plan, right? Because if you're a doctor who performs medical abortions, that is a
mm,
career path that you have to choose. GPs don't perform them, right? Random people, random doctors and random surgeons don't perform them. It's a specific doctor that you go to, so you choose that path. When it comes to assisted dying, obviously we don't know how that's going to work out, but I know in pretty much every single country around the world, doctors are not obliged to have to take part in that treatment, and I understand that. But when it comes to this, if you're signing up to be a GP, your job is generalist. You're going to be
yeah.
accepting to treat literally everyone. I don't think you should be able to refuse on beliefs. I don't know if that's problematic. Am I missing something? I don't know. Because if we're allowing people to do this based on simple beliefs, what then, obviously, under law, stops people from denying other people types of care based on their beliefs too? If you're signing up to be a generalist, I don't really think you have a right to say no. Um, it just doesn't simply make sense to me at all that a GP should be able to refuse this type of care. And I feel like it's almost like this Christian centricness that we have in this country, right? That if this, imagine, can you imagine the Daily Mail headline if any other religion, or particularly people from certain religions in the NHS, started denying people certain types of care based on their belief? Can you imagine what type of headlines we would have then? There'd be outcry. But because we live in this Christian centric country, that somehow we're just accepting, or many people are accepting, that a generalist can deny people care. It just doesn't make sense to me. Am I getting anything wrong there?
No, I don't think so. If it was the case that, say, Muslim GPs were denying people certain treatments because it was out of line with their faith, there would be a massive uproar and probably a scare campaign that got completely out of control over it. That's not to say we want that level of hysteria, but we want just and respectable treatment of trans people. It's not asking much. It really isn't.
It's not asking much at all. Can you imagine as well? Like, let's think of Catholics, right? There
Mm,
are many Catholics out there who don't even believe in simple birth control. What world would we be living in if all the Catholic GPs around the country just started saying, "Oh, you want to come to me to get birth control? You want the pill? You even want free condoms?" And like GPs start saying no to stuff like that, it would be unthinkable. So
yeah.
why are we allowing GPs to deny people this type of care? I think the thing that frustrates me the most is, like, I wouldn't say, obviously, I would never say I'm willing to accept it if it was a new patient, because I'm not, because everyone's entitled to their healthcare. But a specific part of the changes with the cast review is that they wanted to specifically not stop people who were already on existing treatment from getting treatment. That was a specific part of the changes. And the fact that people can just suddenly just start denying care. I mentioned earlier the post that I saw on Reddit. I think it was just Transgender UK, the Reddit page, where somebody was describing that they've been on these drugs for 17 years, and then they had to ring around. They tried finding other GPs, and no one would accept them. It just simply is absolutely shocking. But again, this has come from the rhetoric that's built up, right, from over the
Yeah.
last few years. It's the culture wars, it's the fake lies about children having, breasts chopped off at the age of 12. Almost every story out there which has been sensationalized is mostly provably false or massively misinformed. But what I'm scared about is that, okay, there's a light has now been shined on this story. Is something actually going to be done about it? Because our LGBTQ health minister, Wes Streeting, who has gone from ally to fucking enemy over the last few months in terms of his community, really pisses me off. He said in that famous interview oh, a few years ago I would have just said, yeah, a trans woman's a trans woman, and now I've spoken to people and it's got a lot more complicated. If this was any other under any other Labour government and it wasn't West Street, I might actually have hope they might make a change and get on top of this. But with West Streeting, I don't have any fucking hope at all. I don't know about you.
Not without a great deal of pressure on him and on this government. Fortunately, we have seen that pressure does work, and that that there is hope in kind of protest around the government. I know it's kind of an obvious point that Labour hasn't done the right thing regarding Gaza, for example, but the protest did force them to make certain concessions,
Yeah.
which have been meaningful but not enough, let's say. I'm thinking of the restrictions on arms. Not enough, but something, and it shows that protest works. The same is true in this case. If enough people kick off about this, ultimately, there could be a shift, but there has to be that battle. Because you look at West Streeting, he is purely responding to the culture war and its narratives. He's acting opportunistically. Well, if he's put on the spot and pressured a bit more from the other direction, he may shift.
Support independent media, support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you. Turn left.